So you've decided that you want to get a garden room, whether it's to work in, escape in, or just hide from your kids. And you're not sure whether you should buy a prefabricated summer house like this one, or build your own from scratch, like I have here. As someone that has done both of these choices, I feel quite well placed to tell you the things that I wish I knew before I did either. In this video, I'll be breaking down the cost, difficulty to build, maintenance, looks, as well as the reality of what it's like working in both of these buildings. Let's get into it. The summer house behind me, I got back during the beginning of COVID, actually. It cost me £5,500. It was delivered by Dunster House. It arrives as a big jigsaw, totally flat packed, and I put it together in about one day. And as you can imagine, the prices since 2019, 2020 have changed quite a bit. So just to make sure that we are comparing apples to apples here, I've gone onto the Dunster House website and found this log cabin that's about 5 by 3 meters, which is a similar size to the workshop that I built, that is currently available for just under £5,000. And whilst that sounds simple enough, this isn't accounting for the base that you will need to put down before you can actually build your summer house. It also isn't accounting for anything like the paint that you'll need on the outside, the electrics for the internals, and any extra features like an additional window and door that you might need. A good example of an optional extra is this additional door that I bought. I think this was an additional £200. It does look like a bird has gone to the bathroom all over it, so sorry about that. And this is really important to factor in, because once you've added on all of those optional extras and the not so optional extras like the base, you're probably looking at an additional spend on top of what the actual summer house costs of about £2,000 to £3,000. So overall, a log cabin that is about 3 by 6 meters is going to set you back in the range to about £8,000 to £9,000. On the flip side of that, my workshop that I built just this time last year set me back just over £7,000. I did a full video breaking down the details of that, which I'll link to here. I'm not going to break it all down here because I don't want to repeat what I've said there. But the main thing to mention here is you've got a lot more flexibility as to what materials you decide to use. If you're quite a savvy person and you can source second-hand materials, then you could potentially slash the price of it in half. Also, the other big factor at play here is if you are confident enough to actually build this yourself. If you are considering paying a labourer to do the work for you, honestly, you can probably double that £7,000. In conclusion, you can expect a prefabricated summer house and a self-build to set you back about the same cost. But just remember, if you are paying an external labourer to do the work for you, it's going to cost a lot more, which seems like a great time to talk about the difficulty to build. A summer house is essentially a flat pack piece of furniture, similar to what you might receive from IKEA. There's just a hell of a lot more timber than what you get in a set of drawers. You are going to need some pretty basic tools like a hammer. There's no need to get out the big expensive equipment when you're ordering one of these. You're going to need a good friend and probably a whole weekend, as well as a lot of patience when you realise that most of the instructions are written in hieroglyphics. A DIY build, however, is a totally different game. You are going to need considerably more tools, a lot more time, as well as a lot more knowledge and confidence in basic building construction. But this does give you absolute and total control over everything. Every measurement, every piece of material, it's going to be totally down to you. So there's a lot more room for customization here. In conclusion, a prefabricated summer house is a lot easier and certainly a lot faster to build, whereas a DIY build is a lot more rewarding, but it's certainly not for the faint-hearted. Maintenance is another huge factor that you need to consider when weighing up your options here. Now here, I'm next to my summer house. I've had it for 4 years and I've only painted it once when I actually got it. You can see now that that paint is actually wearing out a little bit and it is definitely going to be due another coat. And honestly, I don't think I've actually got the patience to lightly sand this down and then paint the entire thing again. I just hate painting. Also, there's other factors at play. Being a structure that is entirely made of timber means that this thing grows and shrinks with the seasons. A good example of this is right now, it is coming up to summer, it is mid-June time, and you can see that this door here has become really stiff. So that's something to be aware of. Also, if you come inside my summer house, you can see that this section I've sort of got my home gym, and in winter, there is a good 1-inch gap above this power rack here. As you can see in summer, it's gone down and there's barely enough room to slide a piece of paper in there. And obviously, if you decide to clad your DIY build in timber, then you're going to have this exact same issue from a maintenance point of view. You're still going to need to expect to paint it every 2 to 3 years to keep it maintained. This is exactly why I went for this plastic cladding option that, yeah, was a bit more expensive, but I sleep very sound at night knowing that I will never need to paint this or maintain it ever again. With a prefabricated summer house, you should expect to do a fair bit more maintenance, whereas a DIY build done right can be significantly lower maintenance in the long run. As for looks, well, let's be honest, a summer house, it looks pretty charming. You may not agree with the colour that I've opted for on the walls as well as the doors and windows, and if you don't, well, that's up to you. It's all personal preference, right? Let me know in the comments. But there's no denying that there is a certain level of charm with a summer house that you probably won't replicate building it yourself unless you really know what you're doing. Whereas a DIY build, you're going to have to really know what you're going for at the start to end up with that final look. Mine is certainly more of a fortress than a fairy tale looking summer house, but I love it. Overall, I would say that a prefabricated summer house does have instant curb appeal. At the end of the day, this thing turns up pre-designed, ready to build, and you don't really have to worry about it looking any different from the catalogue picture where you ordered it. Whereas a DIY build, you're gonna have to both execute on the design and the actual build of it and just hope that you get it right. Prior to building my workshop, I actually worked in this summer house for about 4 years, and I can tell you with absolute confidence, there's about 3 months of the year where it's perfect. In winter, it is so cold that even the heater isn't enough to quite warm my fingers whilst I'm typing on my keyboard. And in peak summer, at sort of 25 degrees plus, this thing is basically a sauna. So unless you insulate it, bear that in mind. It is really hard to use one of these as a home office if you haven't insulated it properly. Whereas in my self-build, I insisted on insulating this with the thickest PIR board that I could fit within the actual gap of the timber walls. The result of that means that this thing is beautifully cool in the summer and can very quickly heat up in the winter after about an hour of having my heater on. Since then, I've actually moved all of my home office from the summer house into here, which does have its challenges with using it as a workshop as well, but I've managed to make do so far. And this has been lovely because it means I'm not sat there in gloves in winter, or I'm not sat there basically in my pants in summertime. And it is worth mentioning that you obviously can insulate a summer house, but the things you need to remember is this is going to come at additional costs beyond what you've paid. Also, the thickness of the PIR board or the insulation that you're going to have is going to decrease the actual internal size of your summer house. So remember that as well. From my point of view, if you are just looking at a summer house without insulation and you're not planning to insulate it, it doesn't really make a good working office in the UK for all year round. So I guess that makes the killer question, what would I do if I had neither of these buildings and I was looking to do one or the other? Well, I can say with absolute confidence that if I was to do this again, I would 100% go with the self-build option. The quality of the build, the comfort of working inside it, as well as the feeling of satisfaction every time I look at it, 100% makes it worth it from my point of view. And don't get me wrong, I get why people buy summer houses. They're really fast to build, they're really simple to put together, and you don't need to know what noggins are or own all of the tools to take on the build yourself. And really, I think that's what it comes down to. If you are the type of person that backs yourself to do one of these self-builds, then you will likely end up with a much better result. And if you're not, then opt for a summer house. Just know that there is an increased amount of maintenance that you're going to do, certainly with painting it every few years. It will need some upgrades to it if you want additional doors and windows, and you'll need to put the electrics in there, so that's all going to come at extra costs. And it won't be ideal working in it year round without insulation, but it certainly has its place. And if you are considering building your own workshop, then you should check out the workshop plans that I have available on my website. This breaks down everything you need to know, including all of the materials that you can expect to buy, as well as detailed plans and step-by-step instructions. So make sure you check that out. It is well worth the money. And if you want to watch me build that workshop, you can click here next. Until next time, happy building.